There's a harsh paradox in life that very few people fully grasp until it's too late. From the moment we're young, we're taught that being kind, open, vulnerable, and emotionally available will earn us love, greater protection, and better understanding. But often, reality flips that on its head. Instead of being cherished, we're taken for granted. Instead of being shielded, we're left exposed. And instead of feeling understood, we're misunderstood. That's the tough truth we need to start with. You try to help others by giving away your soul only to get hurt by those very same people you've been trying to save. Yet in the darkest depths of this pain, Carl Jung offers us a guiding light, a profound psychological and spiritual truth that can transform everything. Jung once said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." This powerful statement can set you free because it reveals that your true strength doesn't come from how others treat you, but from how you respond, how aware you are, and how you integrate those experiences into your being. This video isn't meant to be surface-level self-help fluff. It dives deep into a genuine psychological transformation rooted in Jung's most powerful teaching: shadow work, individuation, and the integration of pain. Once you grasp these concepts, nothing and no one can hurt you in the same way ever again. Your pain won't confuse you anymore. It will become a teacher. The people trying to control you will only reveal who you truly are. Here's the honest truth Jung explored throughout his life. The world reflects back to us what we've yet to accept about ourselves. That's why it's so easy to get hurt. It's because we're still running from parts of ourselves. We're more concerned with being liked than with being real. Let's go even deeper. We've all been betrayed at some point: a lover, a parent, maybe a best friend. And that betrayal can carve an emotional wound so raw it damages our trust in others and even ourselves. But Jung would ask, what part of yourself ignored the red flags? What part of you needed their love so badly that you ignored your own intuition? That's where your freedom lies. This isn't about building fake barriers or becoming cold-hearted. It's about creating a solid inner foundation so strong that no external storm can break you again. Jung believed that true healing begins the moment we become honest about the contradictions within us: light and the shadow, strength and fear, logic and emotion. When you fully accept and understand your true self, you stop depending on the world to define you, and you cease giving others the power to validate your worth. And when that happens, something incredible occurs: you become unshakable. In this video, I'll share 6 deeply personal truths, each pulled directly from Jung's vast psychological wisdom. Every point will challenge how you see yourself, how you've been conditioned to respond to pain, and how you can ultimately rise above it all. You'll learn why people hurt you, why your mind keeps looping the same destructive patterns, and how you can regain control over your emotions. If you stay with me through this entire journey, I promise your pain will start to make sense, and from that understanding, you will emerge stronger. Don't forget to like this video, share it with someone you care about, subscribe to the channel, and most importantly, don't skip any part. Every second counts. Now let's begin your transformation. Number 1. You are hurt most by what you haven't yet owned. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That's why we keep getting hurt in familiar patterns, because it's not just about what others do to us. It's about the parts of ourselves we refuse to face. Let me be honest. You're not only hurting because of others' actions, but because of unconscious expectations, projections, and repressed emotions buried inside you. Have you ever met someone who triggered an instant emotional reaction? Maybe they were too cold, too confident, or too indifferent, and yet they didn't really do anything, but they activated something painful within you. That's Jung describing a shadow, an unacknowledged part of yourself you've disowned. The truth is, people act as mirrors. They reflect back the parts of us we're uncomfortable with. If rejection makes you overly sensitive, it's likely because you haven't healed the belief that you're only worthy when accepted. If you're attracted to controlling people, it's because you haven't fully stepped into your own power yet. The pain is revealing your unconscious wounds, which you're still unaware of, making you give others the perfect target. But this isn't your fault. We're all conditioned to hide our pain, to fake strength, and to protect ourselves with masks. Jung teaches us that healing comes from embracing wholeness, not perfection. That means admitting your fears, facing your triggers, and saying, yes, this hurts, but I see the part of me that allowed it. That's not weakness. It's real power. For example, think of a man who grew up with emotionally distant parents. He learned early that love was earned through overdoing, overgiving, and suppressing his own needs. Later, he keeps attracting emotionally unavailable partners, keeps trying, but always ends up feeling abandoned. Why? Because his deep-set unconscious belief I must overgive to be loved drives his actions. Until he recognizes this belief, he'll keep suffering and blaming fate. Once you realize this, something magical happens. You stop blaming the world and start reclaiming your power. You stop trying to change others and begin transforming yourself. Pain then becomes a guide, not a punishment. So how do you start owning what's hurting you? First, observe your emotional reactions without judgment. Every intense feeling carries a message from your unconscious mind. Second, journal your triggers. Ask yourself, what does this remind me of from my past? Third, practice honest self-talk. Speak to the parts of you that are afraid, angry, or ashamed. Give them a voice. Doing this inner work is difficult. It shatters illusions. But once you start, people no longer control you with guilt, rejection, or manipulation because you've seen into your own heart. Remember, you're hurt most by what you haven't yet owned. Own it and you become immune to its power. Number 2, people can only hurt you through the wounds you refuse to heal. There's a pattern nearly everyone experiences but few recognize. The same type of person keeps hurting you, different faces, different roles, but the results are always the same. You feel inadequate. Jung would say, it's not just bad luck. Unresolved emotional wounds are calling for your attention. The hardest part is accepting yourself fully. Jung believed that's where true healing begins, by stopping the cycle of constantly trying to change others, and instead taking full responsibility for your own wounds. For example, if you have a deep fear of abandonment stemming from an unstable childhood, even a simple silence or delayed message can send you spiraling into panic. You interpret that silence as rejection, and then consciously or unconsciously you chase, tolerate breadcrumbs, or try to prove your worth. This isn't love, it's emotional survival. As Jung pointed out, you're not being hurt by the other person, you're touching an unhealed wound inside you. Until you heal that core wound, you'll keep mistaking temporary pain for permanent damage. This repeated trauma isn't because you deserve it, it's because your subconscious is trying to resolve past wounds. Jung explained it simply: what you resist persists, what you look at and face dissolves. You're not meant to dodge triggers, you're meant to integrate them. When you do, the people who once had power over your emotions will lose their grip because you no longer react out of wounded shame or fear. Here's a practical step. First, identify the core emotional wound. Second, trace it back to its origin. When did you first feel this way? Who was involved? What belief about yourself was formed? Finally, reclaim your story by asking, what do I need to believe now to feel whole? Healing isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about remembering who you were before it happened and choosing to grow stronger because of it. Most people stay stuck because they try to protect their wounds instead of healing them. They become guarded, sarcastic, or emotionally unavailable. But behind those defenses is a scared child, waiting for someone who won't leave. When you become that someone for yourself, you stop bleeding on people who never really hurt you. Number 3, you do not attract what you want, you attract what you are. Jung believed in something called inner magnetism, the idea that your subconscious beliefs, traumas, and unresolved emotions emit an energy that pulls similar energies toward you. In other words, if you really want peace but feel chaos inside, or long for loyalty but keep ending up betrayed, or crave love but only find indifference, the problem isn't external, it's internal. It's about which parts of your subconscious still align with your unresolved pain. For example, imagine a woman who grew up with an emotionally absent father. She learned to associate love with distance and approval with performance. Now, even though she consciously desires a loving, attentive partner, she keeps falling for emotionally unavailable men, because her unconscious mind still seeks familiarity with pain, with distance rather than peace. Jung warned that until you make the unconscious conscious, you're doomed to repeat the same patterns, attracting what's familiar, even if it's toxic. Once you do this inner work, your entire world begins to shift. If you start valuing your voice, manipulators will sense they can't control you. If you set boundaries, takers will feel your distance and drift away. If you recognize your worth, toxic lovers will lose their grip because your vibration has changed. Whether you call it psychology or energy, the law remains the same. You attract with your internal state. That's why no affirmation or vision board can change your life unless you first work internally to shift your emotional identity. So how do you do that? First, recognize your emotional pattern. Do you respond to rejection, conflict, or loneliness? Second, stop romanticizing struggle. Stop telling yourself that pain is noble or that suffering builds character. Pain is just a messenger. Third, rebuild your identity. Affirm to yourself, I am worthy of respect. I am allowed to feel safe. I am allowed to walk away. Jung's philosophy isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming whole. And wholeness is what makes you genuinely heard. When you stop abandoning yourself, others can sense it. It either respects your wholeness or runs from it. Either way, you win. Number 4, you're not here to be liked by everyone. You're here to be whole. This is key because people-pleasing, constantly trying to earn approval, destroys your peace. It leads you to neglect your true self just to fulfill others' expectations. Jung famously said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And being authentic often means losing some people along the way. The more real you are, the more people might walk away, but those aren't losses. They're alignments. You weren't born to be agreeable at the cost of your identity. You weren't made to constantly shrink to make others feel big. You weren't designed to betray your needs just to avoid rejection. But from a young age, many of us learned that acceptance is more important than authenticity. Children learn to be good out of fear of losing love. Teens hide their feelings to avoid mockery. Adults stay silent in toxic relationships trying to keep the peace. We call this survival, being nice, pretending to be okay. But Jung says that's not real niceness. It's fragmentation. Every time you silence your truth for approval, you send a message to yourself that your needs are dangerous. Your voice is a threat, and your authenticity must stay hidden to keep safe. But true safety doesn't come from pleasing everyone. It comes from becoming whole. When you own your truth, stop wearing masks, and stand in your integrity, you become powerful. And paradoxically, the more whole you are, the more rejection you might face at first. Why? Because those who were comfortable with your compliance might feel threatened by your new boundaries. They'll claim you've changed, call you cold or selfish. Jung reminds us, that's not your burden. The most terrifying thing is accepting yourself completely. When you do, it will scare people who haven't done the same. That's why life isn't about being liked, it's about alignment. And when you stop chasing approval, you begin to say no without guilt. Walk away from draining relationships. Stop explaining your worth to indifferent people, and stop feeling rejected because you're no longer rejecting yourself. Here's a simple practice. First, identify the masks you wear. Who are you around different people? The helper, the tough one, the joker. Second, practice micro-honesty. Say no or express an opinion in small moments. Already, your self-respect will grow. Third, journal your truth daily. What did I want to say today but didn't? Over time, that awareness leads to action. Jung believed that wholeness isn't about perfection or popularity. It's about deep honesty at the soul level. You might lose some people, but you'll find yourself, and that's a sacred exchange. Number 5. They can't manipulate your shadow once you understand it. Jung had a secret that still terrifies many. People don't manipulate your strengths, they manipulate your blind spots. And your biggest blind spot is your shadow, the unconscious parts of you you deny, reject, or suppress. These include hidden fears, insecurities, desires, and instincts, or shameful secrets. But here's the paradox. What you suppress will always be used against you until you bring it into the light. Manipulators pick up on your needs to be liked, your guilt, or low self-esteem, they sense your unresolved shadows and exploit them. For example, someone who fears abandonment might get manipulated by a partner who starts causing drama, threatening to leave, or ghosting them after fights. Not because they're indecisive, but because that person knows their fear will make you surrender. If that fear is unconscious, you'll do anything to avoid losing them. Apologize when you're innocent, chase after them, beg for peace. But if you've faced that fear consciously, if you've worked on it and integrated that part of you, you'll respond differently. You could say, if you want to leave, go. I won't beg for someone who doesn't respect me. That's emotional freedom. Jung taught, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light. One makes the darkness conscious. The darkness in you isn't evil, it's just unintegrated. Until you bring it into the light, others will keep using it to control you, distorting your identity, manipulating your emotions, exhausting your spirit. To start working with your shadow, begin by noticing your triggers, what makes you overreact. That's the language of your shadow. Next, ask yourself, what am I trying to hide? Is it anger, jealousy, or the need to be loved? Bring it into awareness. Then speak to your shadow, don't shame it. Ask, what are you afraid of? What do you need from me now? Becoming your own inner parent is vital. When you learn how to stand in your darkness, no one can weaponize it against you anymore. You become immune to guilt trips, manipulation, passive aggression, love bombing, or silent treatments, tactics that used to control you. Your truth and your shadow are powerful. Once you've reclaimed them, the manipulative tactics lose their effect. This is the core of Jungian strength, mastering your dark side instead of running from it. Number 6, pain loses power when you change its meaning. One truth that completely rewires your relationship with pain is this. Pain isn't what destroys you, it's what builds you. When you shift how you see pain, you turn it into a catalyst for growth. Jung believed suffering we try to avoid is often the very thing necessary for our consciousness to expand. He famously said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain," but most of us resist this. We numb, escape, or stay in toxic situations because we're afraid of loneliness or discomfort. We distract ourselves with superficial pleasures rather than facing the truth. And as Jung warned, pain that is avoided will multiply. Imagine someone who's been betrayed and left heartbroken. They carry that pain constantly, replaying the moment of betrayal, questioning what went wrong. If they attach the wrong meaning, thinking, I am unworthy, I'll always be abandoned, then that pain becomes a prison that defines their entire identity. Their trauma shapes their future. But what if they changed the meaning? What if they said, this pain isn't proof I'm unlovable, it's proof I dared to love. Their heartbreak isn't weakness, it's a sign they're resilient enough to risk, to open their heart again. That pain then becomes sacred, an opportunity to grow, not a reason to despair. Jung emphasized that your vision only clears when you look inward, into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. Pain wakes you, it reveals the places where you've been asleep. Ignoring red flags, giving too much, settling instead of soaring. But to gain wisdom from pain, you must face it directly. Say, yes, this hurt me, but it doesn't define me, it refines me. Use pain as a teacher rather than a punishment. Here's a practical way to transform pain into power. First, identify what lesson it's trying to teach. Instead of asking, why me? Ask, what is this experience showing me about myself? Second, honor yourself as a survivor, proud that you're still here, still fighting, still growing. Third, create from your pain, write, speak, share, help others. Allow your suffering to shape your purpose. The goal isn't to avoid pain, that's impossible. It's to feel it fully without bitterness, disappointment without shutting down, heartbreak without staying broken. Pain only controls those who refuse to confront it. When you name it, feel it, and turn it into a lesson, it loses its power. Jung didn't give us easy answers. He gave us truth that liberates. He said, the wounds will come, but they won't control you once you own them. That's the real secret. Most people are destroyed by others' opinions, shrinking back in fear of rejection. They seek validation, approval, just to feel safe. But the shift is simple. Safety isn't something others give you. Safety is something you build by knowing who you are. When you understand your shadow, heal your wounds, and own your story, no one can manipulate or hurt you the same way not because others changed, but because you changed. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop chasing people and start drawing peace into your life. You no longer fear loneliness because you enjoy your own company. You become unheard by the world not because they've changed, but because you've reclaimed yourself. That's real power. And I want you to remember this truth, carry it with you every day. You're not broken, you're becoming whole. You're not weak, you're becoming aware. You're not lost, you're rediscovering who you truly are. Jung's work wasn't about perfection, it was about completeness. He said, I'd rather be whole than good. So move forward not in fear but with clarity. Now you hold the secret. Once you learn to face your wounds, master your shadow, and define your worth, nothing will hurt you like it once did. Not because they changed, but because you did. Drop in the comments. I choose healing, wholeness, and power. No one can take that away from me. If this message has given you strength, insight, or healing, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more real growth content. And most important, stop choosing yourself.